Dry Philadelphian air washed across us after we emerged into the outside world once again. Not willing to stay near to large open doors, we both hopped out and cantered into the cover of a chain-link fence, its wire shielded with flakboard, and hunkered beside a gate. Glancing through it, I saw open ground, one of the huge roads that led into the center of Philadelphia. I knew this one led straight back to the gates themselves. At Glimmer's prompting, I listened as best I could. Slavers were laughing as they boasted about a ranger they'd killed. They were up ahead, a short distance from the train yard, and as such, there was no going back there. The road might be our only— No! I heard a wagon approaching. We hid back behind the fence as it tore past us, pulled by muscular earth ponies and chewing up the broken ground under its metal wheels, no doubt carting supplies to a unit in the wastes. Listening again, there were other, farther-off sounds, and even a few shrieks of griffins in the sky above, camouflaged against the red haze. I think we have to make a break over the road. There's loads of slavers in the train yard. Some griffins above it, too. I think. Sorry. No, you're doing fine. I certainly couldn't hear any of that. Come on, while it's quiet and before any more supply wagons rip past. Breaking cover, we cantered as fast as we dared on the hard tarmac. I felt vulnerable. If I looked to the left, I could see the expanse of the wastes. To the right, I could see all the way down the road to the gates of Philadelphia in the distance. No doubt why Red Eye had chosen such a location as to have access to a trade route that ran directly to his fortress. The sight of that open, gaping maw into hell almost made me trip from fear. Down! Surprised, I felt Glimmer force me to the ground, her eyes skyward. Above us, a single griffin was swooping silently in arcs, about 300 meters or so away and 50 meters up. Let's get to the other side! Into cover! I made to move forward before feeling Glimmer hold me tightly down. Don't move! From the sky, motion shows more than shape. Mother taught me that. Stay still. It'll leave. Hopefully. Whimpering, I remained still. We were dead in the middle of the road, 10 meters from the other side. Feeling horribly exposed, I tried to think of why she was right. I was dark and dirty, wearing a black and blood-red fleece, while Glimmer's dark crimson robes seemed to gel into the very atmosphere and smog of Philadelphia, even this far out. My discomfort only grew when I heard the last sound I wanted to. Wagon wheels. Trundling, bobbing, and sparking on the ground. My ears heard them breaking into a fast speed upon the tarmac. Slowly tilting my head, praying with all my might that the griffin wouldn't see me, I looked toward the gate and had to fight the urge to scream. Over a dozen wagons, packed full of Red Eye's army, were barreling down upon us. Glimmer! I whispered back toward her ear, her eyes concrete and held skyward. The griffin was— Oh, goddesses! It was even closer! We were trapped. I had to run. Don't move, Murky. A squeak escaped my mouth. Every muscle was willing me to run. This sort of hiding went against every instinct I had. There's smog and dust clouds around us. The griffin can't see us. The wagons! Stay still. The griffin stopped, head craned toward the wagons. Hovering, I could swear his, or her, too far to tell, eyes looked directly at us, before their gaze swept away down behind the buildings. Immediately we moved. I went first, crawling and staying low. Inch by painfully slow inch, we raced the speeding wagons. They were a few 100 meters away, and only billowing dust had to be hiding us. I dared not cry for leaving a trail of tears, however silly it seemed. Only when we reached the edge and rolled down to the lower level behind a ruined safety barrier did we get to our hooves and gallop madly into the nearest building. No sooner had I ducked into the doorway did the clattering sound of a military convoy hurtle past, wagon after wagon, headed out to ruin some pony's day in the wastes. Silently, I prayed the stable dweller would be evading them. We waited for an extra minute, breathing hard on either side of the double doors, or rather the doorway. The glass doors themselves had long shattered across the floor. Stepping aside, I flinched as I felt a stab of pain. In my haste, I hadn't even noticed my back left fetlock had been cut on the glass. Promise me, Murky, we are never doing that again. Cross my heart and hope to fly. She looked at me weirdly. I just raised one hoof and shrugged. Pinkie Pie said it all the time over the speakers back at the fun farm. The ministry, Mayor? Of course, well... She chuckled and continued, stroking my side briefly where my wings were. Very appropriate for you. I wasn't so sure. Anything from that weird pony freaked me out enough without being reminded of my inabilities. But that said, it was right. Brimstone had told me not to deny who I was. Did that mean I should have that hope? I'd never even considered it. Following Glimmerlight farther in, we found ourselves inside a normal train station for ponies, not the industrial one across the road. The ditch outside had been the area for wagons to pull into, apparently. Open plain interiors with empty cash desks lay barren and trashed against one wall, the booths set below a giant board filled with letters and numbers. Benches and small tug carts littered the main areas over the smooth marble floor. Massive archways made up the support of the building. Had it not been ruined by balefire, it would have been beautiful. This had to be pre-war. The architecture was very different to the blocky factories. Movement caught my eye. From behind a stairwell trundled a rusty old machine shaped like a pony. Each leg moved so slow it made me impatient just to watch the bulbous and creaking robot stumble toward us. A card slot on the front flashed a red light, while its speaker bleeped and blooped lightly, breaking into a grinding but polite-sounding electric tone.
Kkat, please?
Maybe later? Glimmer shrugged to me and resumed looking at the odd remaining robot.
Kkat, please?
Without speaking further, we ignored it and cantered through toward the main stairway. There was no sense in aggravating the machine or causing noise by taking it out. We needed to get our bearings, possibly from the top floor rather than the roof. Old luggage sat unattended around us, strewn open where it had been left and thrown by the blast. Where were the remains? As much as I hated it, it seemed off. Even without bones, the seared clothing and warped utensils and tools seemed utterly bizarre. Nothing was just normal. Glimmerlight wandered to the platform doors, glancing her head through where I could see a train still sitting, bucked off the rails by the force of the bomb. Even as I watched, I saw her shudder and step back. Confused, I went to poke my head around and... No! Her hoof stopped me, looking up at her face, even on her dirtied white coat. She seemed pale and drawn as she slowly shook her head. You don't want to. I needed no further convincing. Stepping back, shaking at the mere thought of what might be found farther in that way, I reflected on the obvious path any pony hearing an evacuation would take, where they might all be. Passing backward, we trotted up the stairs, passing the machine once again. It had completed its excruciatingly slow turn and had been winding forward to meet us again.
Kkat, please?
Surprising even myself, I scouted ahead to each corner as we ascended floor after floor. There was little to see that any pony who had lived in the wastes hadn't encountered, but it was always a constant fight to keep my imagination in check. Listening for griffins was my only real distraction as I passed blocked doorways that no doubt held my greatest fears and worst images. We trotted through an old passenger VIP lounge, the plush couches and chairs ruined and charred into black piles. A huge panoramic window ran from the floor to the ceiling, over 15 feet wide and curved around the corner of the building. Its astonishing view overlooked Philadelphia, blown in the side facing the crater and outward on the other side. Lowering myself to the ground, I led Glimmer around the drinks bar, avoiding shards of glass before we settled behind the cabinets to remain hidden. I saw our freedom. Out ahead of us, stretching as far as I could see, the wastes, dull and barren, broken by wrecked highways and curious towers. It was at once a grand vista of wonder and scale, and a sight telling the shattering tragedy of a lost world. Philadelphia lay wrecked below us, while the highways, wagon trails, and outer bodies of buildings formed the skeletal structure of the greater plains beyond. 1,000 places one could visit, each, no doubt, with its own story, an endless source of discovery. Very quickly, I began to realize just how small I really was. "Every pair of wings," I muttered. "In the wasteland," Glimmerlight finished, before winking at me. "Yeah, I've heard that one too. Good saying, but really, every pony has their own little tale. We're just one more of dozens, maybe hundreds that are out there. The grand history of the wasteland goes on." She pointed with a hoof. "There, the bank down on the skirts. If we head down this row of houses, it shouldn't be too far. It's all side roads. I don't want to say we're home free, but the chances look good. All the griffins in the sky are off to the east." We should have left then, but really, faced with this sight, facing the expanse we were about to head to, who could simply move without a moment to think? I gulped, looking at the world now, and remembered the art in the stable. "Glimmer, do you think this will ever, be good again?" "The city?" "No, Equestria. We never got to see it for real. Do you think we can save it? Ponies, I mean." Glimmerlight watched the shifting clouds that blocked the sun for a few seconds, before hooking a leg around me and pulling me in. "I honestly don't know, Murky. I think every pony out there has taken at least one moment to look to the skies above and just ask, why us? Why in our time? What I would give to live in a world where we were truly safe again, Murky. But the truth is, history always goes on. Maybe ponies descended from us will finally see the light of day." Out there, I saw little rays of brighter sunlight breaking through the muddy sky, casting small portions of the wasteland into brighter relief. Glimmer pointed at it, making sure I saw it, and smiling broadly at the accidental timing. We saw a little shred of beauty out there, one that expanded and let others through as a thinner portion of the cloud passed over, lighting the colors of homes, brush, and field briefly. It wasn't much, but even that dash of color, that one little effort, made me feel closer to what this land once was, and maybe someday could be. Glimmerlight watched it before looking down at me. "There's still good to be had in Equestria. The good fight, to trust and love in one another. We've been given a bad draw from the hand of fate, I know. But if there's one thing ponies have learned over the years, Murky, it's that there's one thing that always stays the same, no matter what hardships come to pass. One thing that never changes." Gazing into the distant and faded plains, and watching those bright spots shift and move with the clouds, I couldn't even turn to speak directly to her. "What's that?" She squeezed me close, talking with a bright, hopeful smile. "Friendship. And someday I know it'll be friendship that sees us all through all this in the end. All it takes is us all to do what we each can." Hearing the way she said that, I felt very warm inside. "I think I'd like to believe that too." Leaning my head on her shoulder, I felt her ruffle my mane as we rested with that view, watching every little ray of sunlight as they danced across the wasteland. No, across Equestria.